Welcome to the channel English Epics. I know what you're thinking, but this isn't that hell. Actually, I live in a town called Hell, in the state of Michigan. It's a small town northwest of Ann Arbor. You can check it out for yourself. I'm an electrical engineer and I work at the university. The physics professors come up with all sorts of incredible ideas, and I bring them to life. This particular line of work hasn't been easy, but I'll get back to that in a moment. Oh, and by the way, my name is Richard, and my wife's name is Karen. Well, she was my wife until recently, but not anymore. Let's leave that as it is for now. This particular project I just finished was not only an adventure, but also my job. One of the oddballs in the physics department, yes, they know I call them that, came up with this ridiculous idea. He wanted to measure low-frequency oscillations of the sun. Why? I have no idea. He wants it done. I make it happen, and in the evening I come home, work in the garden, and have fun with my wife. But here's the thing. The frequency of these oscillations is so low that you need weeks of continuous measurements. Sure, you can collect data for 12 hours on a good day, but you can't observe the sun steadily and without interruption for several weeks, right? Or can you? Actually, you can, because you can go to the South Pole, where the sun never sets. And that was my adventure. Have you ever heard the expression, when hell freezes over? Of course you have. I've heard it 1,000 times. After all, I live in hell, remember? And let me tell you, it gets damn cold here in winter. Our hell freezes over for several months. So there I was, heading to the South Pole, where it's always summer and the sun never stops shining. But here's the twist. While it's summer there, it's winter, back in hell. Funny thing is, summer at the South Pole is even colder than winter in our hell. When the time came, I left my warm bed, my warm wife, and set off on my journey to the South Pole. First, you fly to Hawaii and spend a day under the tropical sun. Then you fly to New Zealand, where the National Science Foundation organizes flights to Antarctica. I spent a week learning how not to die at the South Pole. With each lecture, the place seemed more and more appealing. Actually, no, it didn't. Eventually, when the weather finally cleared up, I boarded transport to McMurdo Station, and from there, we flew to the pole. I was going to live at the pole for 3 weeks, in a real miniature town. Half of us, including me, slept in wall-enclosed tents. I lived in a tent at the frequent South Pole. Taking advantage of the endless daylight, I tried to assemble that damn telescope as fast as I could. The drive mechanism required precise calibration to track the sun from that latitude, and I also had to set up the data transmission system. In a temperate climate, this wouldn't have been too difficult, but at the pole, everything takes 3 times longer. Don't get me wrong, this is a story I'll be able to tell for the rest of my life. Still, a warm wife was waiting for me back home, and I had a lot of catching up to do. We had email access, and I regularly received messages from Karen. I replied to say everything was fine, but usually my messages were short. What was there to talk about? Today was cold. I worked on assembling the telescope, had dinner with the guys, slept in that damn tent. Tomorrow would be exactly the same. By the way, do you know what the most popular movie at the pole is? John Carpenter's The Thing. I'm not kidding. So I spent 3 weeks at the South Pole, and finally, the job was done. I hadn't heard from Karen for about 3 days, but I was heading home, and that was good enough for me. I made it to Auckland, and it took me a couple of days to defrost. The heat felt amazing. I went to the beach and just lay there in the sun. I needed a deep thaw, and some time to count my fingers and toes. When your toes go numb at the pole, you start to worry they might have just fallen off. I still hadn't heard anything from Karen, and I was starting to get concerned. After 3 days of sunbathing under the New Zealand sun, I headed home. I contacted the department and asked them to call my wife. She needed to know when I'd be. back. But they never called me back. During the flights, I passed the time just catching up on sleep. On the way home, Hawaii was just a layover. I couldn't wait to finally get home, kiss my wife, and crash into my own bed. Which brings me to my return to hell. I got off the plane in Detroit and slowly made my way to baggage claim. I was hoping to see Karen as I passed through security, but she wasn't there. To say I was disappointed would be an understatement. In the weeks before my departure, I had been incredibly busy, and she seemed somewhat distracted. I had hoped that 5 weeks apart would help us refocus on what really mattered to us. And then I saw Gail. She and her husband Jack were our best friends. More like family, really. It wasn't unusual for Karen and me to be sitting in the living room or out on the back porch when Gail and Jack would walk right in and say, "Knock, knock." Close friends don't wait for an invitation to come in. Seeing Gail made me feel both happy and uneasy. I hugged her, kissed her on the cheek, and asked, "Where's Karen? I haven't heard from her in a week." She looked a little nervous, as if she were searching for the right words. Then she smiled and said, "She couldn't make it. I came instead." She placed her hands gently over mine. "I'm so glad to see you. And glad you made it back safe and sound." Yeah, it was definitely an adventure, but not the kind you look forward to. It was more boring than thrilling, and it was damn cold. Really, really cold. Gail giggled at that remark. "I'm glad you've kept your sense of humor." She looked into my eyes, what felt like a little too long, as if she was trying to say something more. "Let's grab your bags." So we did, and then we sat down for a cup of coffee before heading to the car. So, what did I miss? Gail just looked at me. She didn't blink, didn't look away, and didn't try to dodge the question. There was sadness in her eyes. "Dick, I don't know how to tell you this. The apple trees you planted behind the garage, they didn't make it. They're gone." "What do you mean they're gone? How can apple trees just disappear? What happened?" "There was a fire. They burned. They burned. Yeah, they burned. Even though the branches were covered in snow, the fire was too strong." "What do you mean, fire? And how could a fire even start?" "Behind the garage? The fire didn't start behind the garage. The garage itself caught fire, and then the flames spread to the apple trees. They all burned down. The garage caught fire." "How bad is it?" "It's gone." "Oh, God. Anne, your Mustang was in the garage at the time." "My Mustang. Is it okay?" "I'm afraid it's beyond repair. The garage roof collapsed on top of it, and then the fire consumed the whole car. Damn it. My apple trees, my car, and my garage destroyed. I'm afraid that's not all. When the fire trucks arrived to put out the blaze, they drove over your front lawn and completely destroyed the flower garden you've been cultivating for the past few years. The flower garden's gone too." "How did the fire even reach the garage?" "The fire spread to the garage from the house. The house caught fire too. Yes, it burned to the ground. My house burned down." "Well, it wasn't exactly a fire. It was more of an explosion." "What? My house exploded?" "Yes. When the house exploded, everything that remained burned up pretty quickly. Looking back now, I think the garage probably caught fire because of the explosion. But why did the house explode? There was a gas leak, and a single spark was enough." "Gas leak. But what caused it? Was Karen doing something around the house?" "Not so much around the house, as in the house. Specifically, she was working in the bedroom when it happened." I just sat there staring at Gail, afraid to ask the next question. She was trembling all over. I took her hand to try and calm her, and waited for her to speak. When she finally continued, her voice was calm and steady. "While you were gone, Jack was helping Karen around the house. It seemed like she always had something that needed doing. something she needed help with. First, it was a problem with the boiler. Then the drain got clogged. Then the faucet started leaking, and the walkway needed to be cleared. And on that day, she needed to bring down some boxes from the attic. She needed help, and Jack kept coming over to give her a hand. Sometimes, I went over too, but that day I had to go to the office. I finished early and headed to your place. Shortly after that, the explosion happened. You must have narrowly escaped with your life. How did the three of you manage to get out in time? I was never in any danger. It takes time for gas to build up. What did she mean by that? It takes time. We sat in silence for a few minutes while I processed the fact that I hadn't heard a word from Karen in over a week. Now I was really starting to worry. Karen and Jack were in the house. Oh yes, you're right. They were in the house. I saw a flash of anger cross Gail's face, and I realized she was mentally reliving that day. I walked in right away, like we always do. I didn't bother ringing the bell, and I heard them as soon as I got inside. I went upstairs to your bedroom, and I saw them there. My husband and your wife, having sex like animals. He was working that tongue of his, and she was egging him on. Karen and Jack were cheating on us. I can't believe it. Oh, believe me. About a minute in, while I was just standing there watching them, I remembered I had my cell phone with me. I recorded them. I have a video. Gail pulled out her phone, and I saw my best friend having sex with my wife. I couldn't believe it, but there it was. They were saying disgusting things about both of us. Jack called you a brainless cuck, and she called you a dumb asshole. They were laughing the whole time they were doing it. She paused for a moment. I could see her pain, and I knew the story she was telling me was true. I had just seen it on her phone with my own eyes. He hadn't shown that kind of enthusiasm with me in a long time. Then Jack started calling me a lazy log, which made Karen laugh even harder. I think her laughter hurt just as much as what Jack said about me. I was overwhelmed by rage and pain. I never would have believed she could betray me like that, and I never even suspected he thought of me that way. Gail was in pain, and I was simply in shock. Karen's betrayal was unfolding right before my eyes, as I watched the video on Gail's phone. The betrayal of her husband with her best friend was unbearable. Gail was on the verge of breaking down, and my own emotions were stretched to the limit. It's like we were trash to them. They didn't even notice I was there. I turned and walked back to the front door. On my way through the kitchen, I thought about that fancy gas stove Karen was so proud of. I turned on all 5 burners and then poured water over them. The flames went out, but the gas kept flowing. I stared at Gail in disbelief. Had she just confessed to killing my wife and her husband? I was speechless. The video had already ended, but all I could think about was how much I hated Karen, more than I had ever hated anyone in my life. That's what happens to a man when his wife cheats on him. She strips him of his self-respect and dignity until there's nothing left but hatred. I felt hollow, like an empty shell of the man I had been just 30 minutes earlier. I sat there, leaning back in the chair with my head down, thinking about how my entire life had changed in just a few minutes. Nothing would ever be the same again. Everything I had was gone. Gail took my hand. Let's go to my place. I'll make dinner, feed you, and in the morning, you'll feel better. As we walked out of the terminal and headed to her car, she took my hand in one of hers and pulled my arm close, with the other. Tomorrow morning, you can turn me into the police for what I've done. I won't blame you. Just promise me one thing. What? Promise me that tonight you'll sleep in my bed. I need this. They took everything from me with their betrayal, their laughter, their mockery. I need you to give me back a piece of what they stole. I need you to be in my bed, if only for one night. I need to feel desired, to feel that you want me, and that you forgive me. We walked a few more steps, and then she turned to me again. She looked at me with a sad smile and said, "I'm not a log." She was on the verge of tears. "Gail, You are the sweetest woman I've ever known, and one of the sexiest. Karen and Jack were cruel liars. Their opinions mean nothing. We walked toward the car, and I started thinking that I didn't blame her one bit for causing that explosion. I had lost an adulterous wife and a friend who betrayed me. And what was so bad about that? The insurance would cover all the other losses. I could easily buy a new car, but I knew I would miss those apple trees.